Okay, well, perhaps more people will join as we go. Might as well get started. Promethea by Alan Moore and J.H. Williams the third. Uh, has anybody else read this besides me? There we go.
Um, I read the TV tropes page, and well, it looks interesting. I I mean, I was just hoping to find like maybe see who else is if anyone's read about it, and then I could just add my 2 cents as we go along.
Cool. Okay, well, Lee, this was your choice. Anything you wanted to particularly say about it? Why you chose it, Lee? Or no? Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to step away for a moment.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Alan Moore and J.H. Williams III, Mick Gray on inks. Promethea. Well, I think this is probably just going to turn into me making the case for reading this, and I don't want to do that. Um,
I mean, it is a book by Alan Moore, so I mean, I guess that's kind of a case in and of itself.
that depends on who you talk to, Will.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it. I mean, Alan Moore has always been kind of weird.
Opinions about Alan Moore are somewhat divided. Lots of people like him, lots of people don't. You get a variety of opinions about Alan Moore. So, as ever, when we're talking about art, art is subjective. You can't force someone to like something they're not going to like. If this is going to work for you, you'll probably know it very quickly. Or if you've read previous works by Alan Moore, this probably won't change your mind. This work in particular is a bit of a divisive work in Alan Moore's catalog. Lots of people like it. Lots of people not so much. So that's why there's a danger of this just turning into uh, me just making the case for it and for reading this. I'd rather not do that. Art is subjective. If this is the sort of thing you like, this might be up your alley. And if it's not at all going to be the type of thing you're into, nothing I say is going to change your mind about that. But before we continue, let's clear this up. So I need a definitive answer. Has anybody else read Promethea before this meeting? Because that'll change what I present, spoilers and everything. Or have you started it and gotten a little bit of the way through, and you haven't gotten all the way to the end? Or have
Yeah,
you
I
not
would
read
say
anything at all?
am I audible?
Yes, you are, Lee.
I would say I'm in the latter. Uh, so I read the first 12 issues or
Cool,
so, deeply enjoying it so far.
cool.
Um, when I read synopsis on a few synopsis online, I understand there are some philosophical and some deep conceptual themes running on in the book, but I don't feel I have yet gotten to the point where I've gotten that deep appreciation for it. So that's really where I'm at in the series.
Cool. Cool. All right. So we will talk about up to issue 12 today. Um, On a personal level, this is one of my favorite comics. I'm glad you chose it, Lee. This is really, really up my alley, and perhaps it might be up yours as well. First of all, yeah, I'm a big Alan Moore fan. I like what he does. I like the way he writes. And you got to give it up for J.H. Williams' absolutely gorgeous, exquisite artwork. We'll be talking about that much more as we go along here. Uh, Again, there's a lot to like here. If this is the sort of thing that's up your alley, extraordinarily well written. Alan Moore, he comes with a reputation. He works everything out, and he's just a skilled practitioner of his craft. So this is yeah, a really, really good comic. It's part of the America's Best Comics line that he did. It's supposed to be in in guise a superhero comic, but as it goes along, it very much stops being a standard traditional superhero comic. It turns into something quite different as it goes along. Um, yeah, it's hard to ignore just the astounding visuals. This is Williams with gray inking, and they've been a team for a while. They've done a number of other books, but this was just, a tour de force over the course of this ran for 32 issues total, but just some astonishing visuals over the course of the 32 two issues. Um, so there's a number of things we can cover here, different aspects of the story and the plot. We've got this is set in 1999, but if you're paying attention, the city and the environment that this is set in it has very advanced futuristic technology. So it even though it's set in 1999, it's obviously some kind of an alternative 1999 where technology took a lot further leaps by the time they got to 1999. There's a lot of future tech and there's a lot of different environmental aspects to the city that just didn't exist in our timeline. But that's neither here nor there. That's just something for the background. Alan Moore loves doing things with the background just for you to pick up. So the basic idea here is it's sort of it's basically a female superhero character. What if we do a female superhero character in a way that is intelligent and has some thought put into it? Uh, there's elements of the original Captain Marvel with a body switch where the civilian protagonist switches bodies with the superhero. Um, there's a lot of different superhero conceits here going on. There's a legacy aspect going on. The original Prometheus started decades or even centuries earlier. And the new one that we're going to follow is the newest incarnation of the character. And yeah, all in all, it's actually a really good read. If you read it just as a straight superhero comic, it's a decent read. But yeah, as Lee said, there's more going on here than just that. Sure, you can read that on the surface level of it just being a fun adventure action superhero comic. But as you keep going, you realize, yeah, there's some depth, there's some intelligence here. Moore gives us a lot of mythology. He gives us some philosophy. He gives us some background through art and literature and history. So it's worth the read, I would say. I am hopeful that if you haven't checked it out, that you will, and perhaps this will be to your taste. And a lot of the standard things that you expect from a superhero comic, big super battles with super villains and stuff like that. There is that, sure, at the beginning, at first. But and I'm sure Lee will attest to this, as it keeps going, yeah, that just becomes less and less important. And as the series progresses, yeah, all of the philosophy and the ideas and the history lessons pretty much take over almost entirely. And that is one of the reasons why this is a very divisive title. A lot of people, that's their jam. And a lot of people, yeah, they just didn't have any time at all for that sort of thing. So you got a lot of divided opinions about this. Me personally, I'm on board. I can't get enough. I loved it. Loved it. Loved it. Yeah, give me all you got of that. I think in an interview, Alan Moore said, "Yeah, there are plenty of comic books because people were complaining. Why is there so much, philosophy and just all of the story and plot and action just fell away? People were complaining about that." And Alan Moore said, "There are many comic books that do not have philosophical inquisitions and expositions and diatribes. There's plenty of them out there that don't have that. This is one that does. If it's not to your taste, then go and read those other ones." Yeah, so that's about the extent of the amount that I'm going to make the case for reading this. Because if it's your jam, you'll know it pretty quickly. If it's not to your taste, you'll know that pretty quickly too. Um, that's the way it is with art.
Hmm.
There's a lot, I mean, let's just get right down to it. What he's talking about here is the Western traditions of esoterica, if you understand what I just said.
Well, I know generally, I mean I might not know much. I mean, I've seen Hell of a Boss. I kind of get a sense of what that was, and I mean how some certain, yeah, it's a basically a like a text of like all the different like the different demons and hierarchies of demons in hell, right? Is that it?
Yeah, yeah. The Western esoteric tradition. Uh, there's a long, large ocean of of information and background to travel in if you have any interest at all in that. And what Alan Moore is basically doing is distilling all that and pouring it into a superhero comic book. I think he does a good job of it, but you can understand why it's not to some people's taste at all. One of the things I always said was, for the people who complained about it, if you ever read those, if you ever read 1960s Marvel comics by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, and Steve Ditko. And I don't blame you if you haven't, but if you've ever read 1960s Marvel comics, you know, if you read like for example, like the 1960s Doctor Strange comics where Doctor Strange would like travel to alternate dimensions and he would travel to like the dark dimension and chase Dormammu through different realms. They would do that for several issues. Or for that matter, if you read Thor, the Thor comic, where Thor, is a god from Asgard, and he would, battle the frost giants from Jotunheim, or he would travel to Valhalla or Vanaheim and all the different realms of Asgard. He would do that. When they did that, nobody complained about that. Did anybody complain about that? I don't remember anybody complaining about that. Of course, what they were doing is they were just making it all up. It wasn't actually real. If you want to, if you really want to, you can just assume that Alan Moore is making all this up. Go ahead. No one's stopping you. Go ahead and do that. Just assume all this is just equally as fictional as anything Stan Lee and Jack Kirby came up with. If you feel like it, go right ahead and do that. It just seemed to bother people that Alan Moore was putting in a bunch of, you know, inquisitions about, tarot and the Kabbalah, and and the magical traditions of the West, um, the Occidental traditions of magic, and it just seemed to bother people. Well, if it bothers you, don't think of it as real. Just think of it as anything fictional that Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko ever came up with. I heard one person say it's something like reading those Jack Chick, Christian, Catholic indoctrination tracts. I think that's going a little too far myself. But I guess you can kind of understand why a lot of people got pretty upset about it at the time. I remember at the time this was coming out, people were getting really hot about it. People were getting emotional about it. I don't see any reason for that.
I'm kind of surprised to hear that. Just looking, learning about this recently, and I'm very much interested in the history of like Western magic traditions and esoterica.
Yeah,
And when I was just like looking up online, everything I heard was very, very positive, and especially like people who, maybe aren't strictly interested in, comic books, were reading this as just something to really learn from and gain, the insights from. And that's what kind of brought me to this piece.
cool, cool. Well, that's the right attitude to approach Promethea. You're approaching it right. Yeah, have an open mind and be willing to let more take you on the journey that he has outlined. And if you do, it's one heck of a journey. It really is. Yeah, you're approaching it right, Lee. Yeah, just this is one heck of a journey if you're open to it. This is a great 32 issue comic book. It really is. There's a lot here. There's a lot to cover. And the really heavy stuff is still ahead of you, Lee. You'll get to it.
Yeah,
Keep going. Maybe we'll do another meeting. We'll do a book two after this next month. How about that?
okay, I'm open to that, but I'd enjoy that, in fact. But I will say,
Cool.
don't feel like you have to constrain yourself to the first few issues because I have had a lot of this spoiled for me in just my reading online.
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons to read Promethea. It's a great comic if it's gonna float your boat. There's a lot here. There really is. Um, Yeah, I mean, the reason I keep saying that is just I'm not sure what else to say about it because, if you like it, you realize you're gonna like it. Charles Vess. Here we got Charles Vess doing a story. The great Charles Vess. Doesn't get much better than Charles Vess.
Is Charles like is this a real person like Charles how do you spell his name?
Charles Vess, the artist, Vess. Charles Vess.
Okay. My, come on.
But yeah, just what we're talking about is just really great writing, really great art. What more do you want? This is great and grand and fine comic booking at its best.
I will say I didn't get the full experience because I was largely reading this on my Kindle, and because of the sheer amount of two page spreads, everything was broken up. But I'm kind of glad I didn't even buy the physical copy because I feel like you have to read this on a computer to really take in the full effect.
Uh yeah, there are some issues that are nothing but double page spreads. And yeah, you do need to see them joined to really understand the page and how the page is designed. They have to be joined up. Yeah, if the Kindle isn't doing that, then yeah, you're not getting it. And as always with more, you just get so many like little tiny fun things. You've got the billboard posters of Weeping Gorilla comics. Here, this one is saying that Tamagotchi trusted me. Uh they don't mean anything. They're just fun little things. I enjoy the heck out of them myself. I think they're hilarious, but your mileage may vary. They're just fun little it's an advertising campaign for Weeping Gorilla comics. And then later we get the Chuckling Duck comics.
No, that was
Eh,
the first part I laughed aloud on when they meet the gorilla in the imaginary plane.
Yeah,
It's
that's
just he
right.
serves to symbolize like all human unhappiness.
That's right.
Apparently, there was some formula. There was a reason for the presence of the gorilla. Like there was some famous, I think it was cartoonist, and he had like some recommendations of what makes a successful comic book, and a gorilla was one of those things for some reason. Things for some.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You're talking about uh yeah, Julie God, Schwartz. Julia Schwartz. You're talking about Julia Schwartz. I don't know if you said it was an essential element, but yes, Julie Schwartz was a very famous DC Comics editor for many, many decades, and he would be one of the things he's well known for is his gorilla uh, themed comics where there would be gorillas on the cover. Yeah, Julie Schwartz was well known. Anyway, this one, she gets the kids and the house. I get the car. Depends on your sense of humor, but I just think that's hilarious. And the way Williams depicts the imagination realm are just absolutely gorgeous, just to die for. These are just astounding visuals. These are just dreamscapes as we're in this imagination realm world, and just beautiful, beautiful artwork. You've got the surrealism and the Salvador Dali stuff going. It depends on your taste. Some people have very little patience for that sort of thing. I love it. It's wonderful to me. Surrealism and Dadaism, and just beautiful, gorgeous rendering of these surreal dreamscape landscapes. Some people get very impatient with that sort of thing, but I love it.
So the deeper I've got into this series, the more it's led me to kind of wonder about, Alan Moore and just as a person, what he really believes. Because I know I've read before that he practices witchcraft to some extent. But what I heard was he practices it as an art form, and it wasn't really, a sincere religious kind of belief system for him, or at least that's the impression I got. But the more I read this, the more I feel like he is grappling and deeply pondering these things. And it's not just a creative exercise.
Well, from what I know of Moore, I mean, to be sure, he's given many extensive interviews detailing in depth exactly what he believes and thinks. And I would say I've read most of them. Uh, no, he's quite serious. He's done several decades worth by now, several decades worth of serious study and pursuit of the Western esoteric tradition. He's gone as deep as it's possible for anybody to go into it. He's done his homework. He knows his stuff. He's given many, many, many interviews where he's extensively talked about. Um, no, he's very, very well educated in the subject. Let's see. So here in the first 12 issues, Moore is still following the requirements of following an actual plot and an actual story. Yeah. Yeah. I think a little bit after these 12 issues, he pretty much abandons that entirely. There's a tiny thread of a plot, but yeah, it's I always liken it to a travel log, like the great travel logs where the point of the story, the reason the story exists is to take you through the uh the environment. Dante's Inferno, I guess, would be a great example of a travelogue. If there's a small thread of a plot, it's just to service that goal of showing you through the environment and displaying the environment. Yeah, Dante's Inferno is probably the classic example of a travelogue, but there are plenty of others, of course. And as you can see, you get huge helpings of Alan Moore's philosophy. And here in these first 12 issues, he's just getting warmed up. You think there's a lot in these 12 issues. He's just getting started. You can see. And again, the world that we're living in, being the way it is, you get a lot of people with a variety of opinions about that, about the function of art and whether or not opinions ought to be in there. Don't think we need to delve too deeply down those avenues. But you get the idea here. The world isn't the planet or the life and people on it. The world is our
Mhm.
systems, our politics, our economies, our ideas of the world. It's our flags and our banknotes and our border wars. I say, end this filthy mess now, and so on and so on. You know, the author telling us what he thinks about things. That annoys some people. Depends on your sensibility, I suppose. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I bought my ticket. I'm willing to hear what you have to say. Lay it on me. But plenty of other readers, viewers, audience members are find themselves taking offense at that. And I'm not here to say one response is better than the other. When the First World War erupted, it felt like a personal failure. Promethea's imagination and war, all war is conflict. It's nothing but failure of imagination. The four horsemen don't cause the apocalypse. They merely symbolize what life on Earth is already like. They show us why we need an apocalypse. Mankind must imagine a way to rise above the perilous material situation that it has created. You get the idea. And here we get a little bit of a taste of Alan Moore taking us on a like a Schoolhouse Rock kind of lesson plan in some of these esoteric ideas. If you're not prepared for it, you can see why it would have been a little jarring to get that. If you're expecting, explosions or space battles and, punching the bad guys, yeah, you're probably reading the wrong book.
I know, at least for me, this is making me really look forward to getting deeper into the series and finishing it. I mean, so for me,
Yeah.
this is more of a recent interest for me. I even have like behind me, I'm sure you've probably heard of David Buckland and his book on the history of witchcraft. So,
No,
so
I
this is
haven't.
really something I'm hoping to learn more about. But so many books that I have read about the history of, the West and esoteric magic belief systems, it's so focused on, maybe the literal practices or the history of it, but don't really dive deep into the philosophy. And, that's really what I'm trying to extract from Promethea, what I'm looking forward to.
There's depending on how deep you want to go, you could spend the rest of your life studying that subject. Well, Lee, the there are people who do. I mean, yeah, it would take multiple lifetimes to cover it. I went through my phase at one point in my life.
Did you, I imagine you've read this comic book before, right? Series?
I've read everything Alan Moore has ever written, Lee. I have
Okay.
not missed a single thing Alan Moore has written.
Would you say, okay, well that makes me want to ask another question that I had, but real quick, would you say that this work had a impact on you when you initially read it? Insofar as like at an intellectual level, philosophically.
Probably not the way you mean it. I don't say the way you mean it is, did it open my eyes to anything?
Hmm.
The answer to that is no, because I was pretty familiar with a lot of these subjects to start with. This was not my first time encountering these ideas. That being said, it's rare to come across a distillation and an explication of the Western esoteric ideas, tradition ideas. So artfully, yeah, explained so well and in so digestible a manner. Alan Moore is an excellent explainer, and he explains it in just such a very clear way. It's a very, very impressive accomplishment that he put all this incredible information, wealth of information, in a way that's very, very accessible and understandable. Yeah, you if you didn't know anything about the subject going in, you will walk away having learned quite a lot. That's yeah, very impressive.
That is
This
wow.
this double page spread was my Windows wallpaper for many years.
Nice.
Have I read this before, Lee?
My bad, my bad.
No,
Well, when I was
better than to ask that, Lee.
well, I guess what I meant to say is, did you read this prior to your exposure or your
Ah,
familiarity with like these esoteric ideas is really
okay, that's a
and
better
it
that's
sounds like that wasn't the case.
that's a better question. No, I was a weird kid, Lee. I was a pretty weird kid. No, I was pursuing quite a lot of interesting things in my younger years. I was one of those kids.
I guess the other thing, and I'm interested to hear from you, like, how many, I know at least for me when I was reading this, and I've only read Watchmen by Alan Moore,
Mm.
the swell guys, obviously, it seems like there's a lot of throwbacks or references to the Watchmen with their characters. And I can't help but think that throughout this comic book, there probably is a lot of, similar ideas, similar characterizations from Moore's other pieces of work.
Well, you'd have to, if you want, you could make very specific parallels
Mhm.
because I don't know any off the top of my head.
Like
But
with the
it's
swell guys, for example.
the witch.
Like the swell guys, the
Yeah, you
superhero
said the
team.
five swell guides and Watchmen, but I'm not saying what the parallels are. Tell me what
Well,
they.
for example, like when they first enter and they're approaching like the riot, they're on this like these platform devices.
That's pretty tenuous, Lee.
Okay, fair enough.
That's pretty tenuous.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and you just for me anyway, I just never ever get tired of just staring in awe at Williams' gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. Williams penciling, gray inking, but what a bravura display of artistry by the two. absolutely exquisite. Some of the best art. I've read a number of reviews of Promethea, and I remember one reviewer saying, the thing about Williams is, well, first of all, his expressions, facial expressions. It's not just that he's good at it, it's that these are not facial expressions that you normally see in standard mainstream American comics. These are just very, very like this guy comes from like an alternate dimension where comics took a very different evolutionary track. Like the way he draws human expressions, you just rarely see anything at all similar to other comic book artists doing these kinds of faces and these kinds of expressions. I mean, this is all subjective, but I kind of see what he was getting at. It's just, it's just very, it's good, but and you still get the sense it's definitely a drawn American mainstream comic book, but it's just so odd and different. And of course, the design, the visual presentation and the design elements, where every panel has these filigrees and brocades and designs on them, and the design of the layouts of the double page spreads. I mean, you can tell it's just someone having fun with just the sheer act of drawing and all the little designy bits, and it all works. It all works. It's just astounding. It's beautiful, in my opinion. You get, fun design patternings and background like wall and textures in the back between the panels. I mean, little design elements depending on where we are in the story. He changes it depending on, what's happening in the story. If we're in ancient Egypt, we had ancient Egypt things. And again, exactly like I said with Alan Moore, we're just getting started. This is the warm up. What's coming up next is just astounding. This is one of the greatest comic book performances of all time. I gotta say.
And I
Bill,
imagine that the latter half is probably what is most controversial because at least up to the point to where I have read, it definitely pushes the boundaries, but it's more or less, what you could say is a standard to some degree superhero, pretty straightforward superhero story.
here we have the one where every page was printed landscape, so you had to turn the comic book on its side to read it when you were reading it in the physical issue. I'm a big fan of just experimenting and pushing the boundaries and avant-garde movies and books. I'm a big fan of all that. I love trying something different, trying to see what can be accomplished in the medium. And honestly, I think Promethea is underrated. I think it doesn't get enough due for for how much it's accomplished. It should be better known. But that's one of the reasons I say it's divisive. That is one of the reasons why you don't hear as many people talk about Promethea as a great one of the all-time great comics. You don't hear a lot of people saying that, but that's why. Because there's a lot of people out there who just didn't have any time at all for this sort of thing. So here's chapter 12. This is the one where, yeah, it's just a journey through the tarot deck. And as I said, this is just an appetizer. This is just an appetizer for what's about to come. If you get to the end of 12 issues and you say, I don't like all of this philosophy stuff and there's no story, it's just like a textbook. You can pull the ripcord now. You can hit the abort button now. Bail out now, because it ain't gonna get any better. It's just gonna get worse. If you really go through this particular chapter, the tarot chapter, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to unpack here. Every one of these spreads, if you go through it, there's three different tracks happening, layered on top of each other. At the top, you've got Promethea giving us the tour through the tarot deck. You've got these Scrabble pieces, which are giving commentary on what we're going through. And running along the bottom of the pages, you're getting a bio comic of Aleister Crowley. And all three things are happening simultaneously on the pages. As I keep repeating, if this is your sort of thing, great. You'll know it pretty quickly. But there's a lot of people who just have no patience for this sort of artistry and artiness. And one of my members who comes to my Friday night groups, he would look at this and he would just say this is entirely pretentious. It's just trying to be intellectual, just to show off. He would have no patience for any of this. So, caveat emptor. Yeah, and around about this point, the uh the the transition from the first 12 into the rest of it is where Moore decides we're just going to go all in on just doing, lectures on the history and background of the Western esoteric tradition. And there's a tiny nod to the ongoing plot, but very tiny. Clearly, he was much, much more interested in giving us a journey through the Western esoteric tradition, and I'm fine with that. I have no problem with that at all. So that's the first 12 issues of Promethea. More than happy to continue on. Maybe next month we'll do book two. How about that, Lee? Got the script here.
Oh, that sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah. As I said, this is just the overture. The real what Promethea is well known for, yeah, is coming up. But yeah, this is just a great comic, in my opinion.
I don't expect, we're going to get a straightforward answer, but part of me still wants to say, I'm still wondering, is Promethea the little girl? Is she going to come back to life? Is she going to meet her father again? Like, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, going all the way back to the very beginning, this whole thing started out with a girl. Well, her father was a victim of the Inquisition at the time, and his daughter winds up being saved by plunging into this idea space imagination realm, and that's the origin of Promethea. Um, yeah, there's a lot happening. Yeah, cool. I'm glad you're enjoying it so far, Lee.
Oh no, Richly.
There's yeah, this is one example that I would point to as a truly excellent comic book.
Yeah, and one that does convey, a lot of information and deep ideas. And, it's almost the opposite of what I suggested last time with psychoanalysis, where
Yeah,
where it is just, like so dry and it's beating you down with all this information.
there you go.
Yeah.
Right. Right. No, Alan Moore is just so talented. He just knows how to engage an audience. Yeah.
And I have to say, I imagine it's going to go, much further past this basic idea, but I'm still struck by this concept of somehow your life or your being preserved by becoming an ideal or becoming, something that people can channel or embody through the imagination. And that providing a sort of continued life or even immortality for someone.
Mhm. Right. Right. Well, yeah, I think that so at one point I think it said yeah, ideas are immortal. Yeah, the flesh will die, but ideas can't be killed.
And very early on, we see that people become Promethea, not just by, channeling that themselves, like through an act of their own imagination, but by other people seeing Promethea in them.
Sure. Yeah, it's something a little bit like Billy Batson turning into Captain Marvel by yelling Shazam. Here we got Sophie Bangs turning into Promethea through an act of creativity. Her name is very deliberately chosen. Sophie Bangs. I'll bet you anything you can work that one out, Lee.
I have not made the connection.
Sophie. Philosophy.
Philosophy.
Oh, oh my gosh,
Sophie. It philosophy is love of wisdom.
flew right past me.
I think it's sophrosune is the Latin. It's wisdom. Hmm.
Is anyone saying anything?
I'm no.
Okay.
There was something else. I think Sophie Bangs. Bangs, I think the intention there is to give the somewhat of an allusion to the sudden burst of enlightenment that comes along with the creative act, or the sudden explosion of insight or philosophical wisdom that sometimes happens,
So
as
like the
well
bang,
as well as the commonly understood slang for sex.
of course.
You said the Big Bang, Will?
Yeah, like I'm just saying like the like all like vast expanse, like everything that's still going on, the multitudes as I believe that poem went.
I wouldn't be surprised if they had that on the mind.
Oh, but yeah, Walt Whitman, I learned that from the film The Life of Chuck. Have you seen it? It's based on a short story by Stephen King, stars Tom Hiddleston. Anyone?
Yeah, as well as the commonly understood slang expression for sex. And as we go on, there's going to be quite a lot more of that.
Oh, more than there was in the first few issues?
To some extent.
I do have to say that was the one thing that initially put me off a little bit.
Hmm,
But I think, they wove everything together, such that it added to the plot and the narrative.
sure.
Here she's learning the lesson of the coins related to attachment, earthly pleasure.
Interesting to note that one of the mayor of New York's identities was Big Rudy. This was at the time when I believe Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York at the time.
Oh yeah, that nutcase.
Yeah, personally, I put this very, very high up on the list of Alan Moore's greatest works. And I have to keep saying that because a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't. If you ever come across the list of great Alan Moore works, It's very rare to see Promethea on that list. People mention Watchmen and V for Vendetta and all the others. I just think a lot of Alan Moore fans just don't have a lot of time for this one. That's the impression that I get. I'm sorry about that because and I understand why, but that's the impression I get. It just this is kind of an overlooked one in the Alan Moore catalog.
Well, okay, so I haven't finished it yet, but I heard that this project was canceled prematurely, like it was supposed to be a longer series. Do you think that's maybe part of the reason it's not as talked about? Would you say it kind of ends at a on a cliffhanger?
Tell you what, Lee, get to the end of
Okay,
all
fair enough.
two issues and then ask that question.
Okay, okay, I will. Or maybe I won't. I'll realize it's a not valid.
You know, I remember back when this was coming out. I think it started 99, I think. And it made a little bit of an impact in the zeitgeist. I remember. Not greatly, but a little bit. I remember, yeah, it got a little bit of a buzz. Like people, I remember a friend of mine went to a play in LA and she told me that they had a large the backdrop of the play was decorated with all these various things, and one of them was Promethea. Promethea was on the backdrop completely randomly. There was a little bit of a buzz in the zeitgeist at the time. I remember people were talking about this.
Are there any works by Moore you feel, you would be confident in placing ranking above this piece?
You know, whenever we talk about art, I always come back to Kierkegaard's line. Being subjective about subjective matters is no great feat. The greater feat is to be objective about subjective matters. I mean, I can give you my opinion, but my opinion is my opinion. Objectively, are you asking objectively? Um, yeah, I've presented it as honestly as I can. There's plenty of reasons why people who don't care for Promethea don't care for it, and their reasons are as valid as any other reasons for liking or not liking something. You know, a truly objective listing, yeah, I think I would put it in the top 10. Sure. I mean, it would be hard to, gainsay the placing of the the obvious Alan Moore classics, Watchmen, V for Vendetta, Swamp Thing, those are the big ones for good reason. Yeah, they're worthy and they deserve high placement, certainly. But yeah, objectively speaking, I think I would put Promethea high in the top 10. But I think a lot of people would say the the reasons why Promethea is noteworthy are the weaknesses of 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 the book. It's not, really telling a story. It's just about the information dump. It's just about, presenting Alan Moore's philosophy and views of the world. And so as an entertaining comic book, it fails, despite great artwork. Lots of people would say that. I've read a lot of reviews that go in that direction. And well, that's one approach to art. My personal ranking, sure, I think it's somewhere in the top three. Might be somewhere in the top one or two. But yeah, in terms of Alan Moore's entire work body of work, yeah, this is one of my favorites.
I'm definitely loving it so far. I know I haven't really heard of this piece before, so it was the last meeting where we read psychoanalysis. You had spoken on more a bit, and it got me interested in reading something by him. I only ever read Watchmen, and I was just kind of digging through Wikipedia, looking for something that might, would catch my interest, and I just happened to see this. It was purely by chance. I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. I never heard people discussing it. And I feel like even just based on what I've read so far, it really is worthy of discussion.
That's exactly right. That people just don't talk about it. And if it does ever come up, you will get lots of people explaining why they don't care for it at length. Alan Moore is kind of a divisive figure to begin with. There's a lot of animosity towards Moore out there. Yeah, we could spend some time talking about the covers. Here we got a pastiche of the famous Sergeant Pepper's cover. Yeah, there's something interesting happening on every one of the covers too.
I wish the characters in the background were more visible because I wouldn't be surprised if there were, throwbacks to some of the same individuals who are on the Sergeant Pepper's album cover, Young, for example. I feel like he would belong here.
Possibly. You're right. I don't know if I can make out anybody who's there. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, possibly. I don't know. Yeah, just yeah. But yeah, there's something interesting happening on every one of the covers too. You go through it. This one is kind of like a movie poster, a 1950s thriller, science fiction, 1950s movie poster. Let's see. This is yeah, again like 1960s, like Peter Max pop art kind of style. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff to pursue in this comic. This is like one of those, yeah, again, 1950s romance comics.
So
At one time, romance comics were the most popular genre in American comics. Yeah, in the 1950s, romance comics sold in the millions, more than any other genre. And this one is like one of those old 1930s pulp fantasy and science fiction digest covers. Virgil Finlay type of painted cover. Of course, you get the Alex Ross cover here. So I guess that's about all we can talk about Promethea this go round. Although I guess I'll give you one warning, Lee, or anybody else who wants to continue and pursue it all the way to the end. If you are planning to go all the way to the end of Promethea, if you are, I'm going to have to give you one warning. Um, what happened was Promethea was one comic in what was the America's Best Comics. You see the America's Best Comics logo on the cover there. America's Best Comics was this comics line, and it was these were actually published by DC Comics, believe it or not. But this was an imprint. America's Best Comics was an imprint of Alan Moore's basically comics line. That's what America's Best Comics was. And it was about, yeah, 5 or 6-ish different titles. Promethea was one of them. But there were other titles in the line. There was, there was other titles. There was top 10. There was Tom Strong. One was called Tomorrow's Stories. Anyway, it was just different ideas for ongoing comic series that Alan Moore had, and they all had different artists. And Promethea was one of those comics, along with the others, Tom Strong and all the others. So the warning I give you, if you are going to go all the way to the end of Promethea, and those other books in the America's Best Comics line are not written the same way Promethea is written. They're different style, different approaches, different attitudes, different ideas about the basic idea of a superhero comics line. Tom Strong is kind of like a old pulp hero, like Doc Savage type of thing. Anyway, so on and so on. Various different flavors of superhero comics. Anyway, if you are going to go all the way to the end of Promethea, you're going to hit a point reading Promethea where there was something of an understanding, something of a expectation that you, the audience, would be familiar with the other books in the America's Best Comics line. You will hit a point in Promethea where you're going to start seeing some characters that you may be confused about. And you may start asking yourself, well, wait a minute. Who's this? Who is this? Who's this character? What, have we seen this? Have we met this? Who is this? Well, who's this? You're going to hit that point. fair warning. They don't do a good, Promethea itself doesn't do a good job of introducing the characters. They kind of did have an expectation that if you're reading Promethea, you probably know who the characters were in the other America's Best Comics line. It was a reasonable expectation, I would say, at the time, but you will hit that point. And you might be a little bit confused when that point hits.
Is there some supplemental reading you'd
So,
recommend?
well, there's a number of different strategies here. You could just ignore it completely and just plow through it if you like. That's one strategy. You might be interested enough to do a little bit of familiarization of the other America's Best Comics line and the characters and who they are. I don't think it's that onerous. Just a little bit, just so that you're a little familiar with who they are. I could give you a little bit of a guide there if you want.
Okay, I imagine by the time I hit that point, I'll know who to look up, probably. Like what
From
series?
where? Where will you know that from?
Well, I imagine they'll introduce the characters. Like, I don't know if Tom Strong suddenly pops up in one issue, for example.
It wouldn't be that bad. It's not that bad. It's
Okay,
not
it's not
bad.
that bad.
Here's what you would have to do, and I would recommend it as a good idea. It's not that bad. Just read the first, yay, 4, 5, 6 issues of each one of those. It's not terrible, and they're not as dense as Promethea. It's not a bad read. You could do it. You could do it. Just read 4, 5, 6 ish issues just to get a basic understanding of who they are and what's going on and where they come from. And they're not terrible comics either. They're entertaining. They're fun. You'd probably enjoy reading them anyway. It's not a terrible homework assignment. It really isn't.
No, I probably enjoy it. I'm doing a little search right now, like what series? I see top 10
Okay,
tomorrow stories.
it's Tom Strong.
Okay.
It's yeah, top 10 tomorrow stories. I think really that unless they're one I'm forgetting, I think that's about it.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, that's no, that's a different thing. You have to read just, 4, 5, 6 ish, thereabouts issues. They're not long, they're not badly written, they're fun, they're entertaining, just to get a basic understanding of who they are and what's going and where they come from.
I probably appreciate that point in Promethea more if I did a little bit
Yeah.
reading just beforehand or before I go further, maybe.
Uh, as homework assignments, I think it's a little bit of a more fun homework assignment that
Okay.
you could get. They're fun comics. They are fun comics. I think you'd just enjoy reading them on their own. But do it before you hit that point in Promethea where you're gonna start asking questions. Who's this? Who's this? Where did this person come from? Do we know this? I've never met this one. You're gonna hit that point in Promethea. It would help you to just know a little bit of background because you're not going to get that just from reading Promethea. And it's fun to have that little bit of a crossover. Yeah, I would say do that. Do that.
Okay.
It's not terrible.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the series The Max.
Yeah, I remember the mask. Yeah.
Yeah, for example, I personally I'm a fan, but I remember at some point, sometimes these crossovers, I hope it's done better in Promethea, but at least for in the Max, at some point they just randomly drop in a Savage Dragon. And it just felt so out of place. I kind of hated it.
Alan Moore does a much better job than that. I'll tell you that. Alan Moore does a much better job. No, you'll get the reason for it when you get there.
I am surprised to hear this was published by DC. What I had heard before was that, this was something, this was basically Moore's company, but at some point they were bought out by DC, and then he kind of abandoned the project.
Oh, yeah, yeah, somewhat. Yeah, it's a little garbled, but yeah, somewhat. I mean, I know the specifics of it if you're interested. Okay, so looking forward to talking about, well, book two, which I'm guessing would be the, well, 13 to 24, and then the 32, so that would be, trying to do math here, 8 issues remaining.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, yeah, lots. Well, given the content of issues 13 to 24, I guess there's only one thing we can talk about, and that's just the content of what's in the comic. Yeah, if you are a brand new beginner and just a complete, beginning learner of Kabbalah and the Western esoteric tradition, well, I think there are worse crash courses to take than having Alan Moore as your guide.
I said I got my tarot deck and everything. I'm ready.
Yeah, okay, okay. Yeah. Yeah, well, there was a period in my life where I was pursuing all that. Enough said. Although I still have a lot of the books. They're still in my library somewhere. So I guess it ended up being kind of me making the case for reading it. Um, it's just I try to be careful because yeah, it's tough being objective about subjective matters. But that really is the art of criticism, and the art of critically reviewing something, being objective about subjectivity. Yeah, there's a lot to like about Promethea, definitely. There's a lot to like about Alan Moore's work in general.
Okay, so now that the screen sharing's done, I guess, does anyone have anything else to say?
I think some of the reviews I read, one ended with because even in a book that plumbs funny book outre, and cultivates the wisdom of excess, one's creative manners must still be minded. The codified smartness of the seekers through the eons here bequeathed will strike readers anywhere from epiphanies to self-evident to cosmic foofra. For me, issue 12's Magical Mystery Tour, however rich and diverse the visual styles, the synthesis undertaken, the symbols evoked, no matter how layered the presentation, how clever the verse, or profound the insight, remains tough sledding. Provoked readers might regard certain of Moore's tracts as horses in varying degrees of high. To continue with the farm animal references, some of these treatments may be like pearls before swine, or teaching a pig to whistle, or some other porcine expression of misplaced resources and a grunting lack of gratitude. Otherwise, there's no obscuring it. Promethea is a silk purse comic in a sousier genre. I read a lot of reviews in that sort of vein. Say a lot of them said, yes, it's undeniably brilliant, but that doesn't necessarily add up to much. Brilliance alone isn't enough. Your mileage may vary.
I don't understand like the basis for such a critique. What do they look for in a comic?
Yeah, I think I always go back to what it is the purpose and goal of art is in general. And there are different purposes and goals for art. Sometimes it is about the brilliance, and sometimes it is about the cleverness, and sometimes it is about the craft, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just about the entertainment, it's just about pleasing an audience. Different artworks have different goals, and I think you don't use the measuring stick for one for trying to say an artwork fails because it doesn't accomplish something it's not intending to accomplish. I would say look at what the intention of the film, the book, whatever it is trying to accomplish, and then does it accomplish that?
At least in this case, for Moore, I believe that he did accomplish what he set out to do, which really was to educate.
Yeah, yeah. I think it just annoys a lot of people that, they expected a standard mainstream superhero comic, and instead they got a philosophy lecture. And that just annoyed them. I really think that's about it.
I mean, do
I
these
mean,
people read other works by Moore? What what were they expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I can't get enough of that. I'll take all he got. I'll take everything more has to give. Load me up. I'll bring around the Dodge. I'll back up the Dodge around back. Just shovel it in. Shovel it in.
I'm still interested. Whenever I finish this piece, you recommended some espionage work by Moore. It wasn't V for Vendetta. I don't think it was. You said it was kind of a historical fiction.
Espionage, Shadowplay.
Okay.
I could get you Shadowplay if you're interested in reading that. Sure.
Okay, yeah, that would be my next work.
Shadowplay.
Sounds.
Shadowplay. Yeah, that's also cool. We did that one in my Friday night group, long time, a couple years ago. Yeah, that's a good one.
okay. I think I need to go. I
All right.
need to make dinner.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure thing.
See
Good.
you maybe another time. Yeah, I'll see what looks interesting.
All right. Good to meet you. Thanks for being
Bye.
here. Bye.
I really enjoyed it, David. Looking forward to the next discussion. Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Book two.
Yep.
Next month. All right, Lee.
All right. See ya.
Catch you later. Bye.